all of us have lane changes in our life, and it's those intricate times where we either choose to change lanes, mean get into a different vehicle that's going to drive us forward, or sometimes life circumstances force us to change. And so as we talk about this, sometimes we've got to change because life forces us to.
Welcome to Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You, the podcast that focuses on Christians that are active in everyday life. Join in as we speak to everyone from successful business owners to educators to athletes about their faith and how it helps them reach out and revolutionize those around them to do the same. And now get ready to roar with your host, the voice of manifestation, John Fuller.
Hey Roar Nation, John Fuller here, and before we get started today, I want to share with you one major thing that has made a difference in my life, and that's working out and nutrition. So besides staying mentally fit, it's important to take care of your body, right? And that means having more energy and more focus throughout the day. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have really long days, and I need every advantage that I can get to keep up with my 3 kids. So my wife, Casey, has created an amazing online program that walks you through step-by-step how to work out and what to eat. The best part about it is she's taken out all the guesswork and what to do and how to do it. She shows you everything. She shoots videos, answers questions, walks you through the whole process. And honestly, the best part about it, besides the last thing that I said, is it's less than $20 a month. I don't know of anywhere you can get such an amazing program for less than $20 a month. So if you will go to our website on areyoureal.org, you'll see a banner on the right side of my beautiful wife, and if you will click on the banner, it'll take you right where you need to go to get started. And the way we've done that is we've created it all through Facebook. So all you have to do is click on there, and it will walk you through and put you into a small private Facebook community. And also all the time I get questions about supplements, what to take, how to take them, do they really work? And we've taken care of that also. If you will send me a message through our website or through Facebook on Are You Real, I will gladly send you some samples of my favorite products that I take every day that help me stay focused and full of energy. So again, Facebook me, private message, send me an email. I will send you samples for free to help you get started. Jump on there, click on the link, send me a message, and we just want to get you mentally strong, physically fit, and for you to be the best you can be. Have a blessed day. Hey Roar Nation, John Fuller here. I am fired up and excited to introduce today's special guest, Lane Ethridge. Lane, you fired up, ready to go, buddy?
Fired up and ready to change lanes, baby.
Let's do it. All right. Lane is the founder of Changing Lanes International. He is a national best-selling author, an international business owner, speaker, trainer, and successful entrepreneur. Life is not about what you accomplish while you live, but how you live in your accomplishments. Life is about following your passions and utilizing your God-given gifts and talents for the benefit of others. Become the ultimate person you can so you can help others reach their ultimate potential. Changing Lanes International contributes to help people give back, think and live bigger, grow as a person and a leader to create a legacy that will impact many generations. There comes a time in life for a lane change, and your time is now. The destination on the road to success is yours to create. Changing lanes is the road trip of a lifetime. Don't let life pass you by. Bypass the good life on the way to your best life. All right, Lane, that is an awesome intro, man. I'm really excited. I would like to dive into more about your business, your interests, and your passion for Jesus, buddy.
Amen, my man. I'm here to serve you guys, and I hope that something I say today will resonate with each person. And, just go from there, and we'll be open-hearted, vulnerable, and, the whole thing is about other people and how do we serve them. And so we're just vehicles, John, today, and hopefully together we can really ignite something and fire people up and get them to roar and change lanes.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. I'm excited about that because I love your intro. You talk about utilizing God-given gifts and talents for the benefit of others. How do you do that?
Good question. Well, I'll kind of go back a little bit to not go into the entire story because I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But, it's interesting, John. I think that as we open up ourselves to God's path and plan for us without paving our own, but then when the door opens, pave it because he's opened that door for us, we really can step into our gifts and not compare ourselves to other people, because comparison is the thief of joy, but rather really own the gift that we've been given and understand that our voice, our message, our path is uniquely divine. And it took me a while to get to that point. But at that point, then I didn't care about what anybody thought, what anybody said, or what anybody did or didn't do, because I really learned, as you've probably known, other people's opinions don't pay my bills. And so, it's very important just to own that. But it kind of started back as a middle school math teacher. I graduated from Virginia Tech, and go Hokies, baby. They're playing a big game tonight, and I love football and I love sports, and grew up playing sports as a family and had two older brothers, and that was a big part of our lives. But the truth of the matter is that I didn't really have a path and a plan, and I just kind of went in the direction I thought might make sense and might be good, which was to go become a middle school math teacher. And, it's interesting. I'll hit on some of the themes and the concepts that I've learned for the entrepreneurs that are listening that I didn't realize at the time until I look back and realize what I was learning. And sometimes we got to be teachers, and sometimes we have to be pupils, and sometimes being both is a great thing as well. And to be a teacher, you have to follow first, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just interesting. I fell in love with students. I fell out of love with the curriculum and out of love with the system of public school. And it really came at a time in which I was starting to explore myself and where I was going to go in the direction. And I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And whether you like the guy or not, I have my opinions, but the reality of the matter is that you read books at a certain time of your life that can change those. And I've gone on since to write 2 #1 best-selling books, because I realized to be a best-selling author, you have to first be a best-selling reader, right? And you've got to really dive in and grow yourself based on other people's success. But it was interesting because that was the summer when I read that book that I was debating what to do, and I basically quit teaching and forewent all of my stability in exchange for following my heart. And I want to emphasize one thing, John, for everybody listening, especially the men out there. We usually lead with our brain. Women usually lead with their intuition and their heart. And since I've been, engaged recently, I've learned how to do both, because the truth of the matter is when I followed my brain, usually it got me in trouble. When she helped me follow my intuition and my heart, that's when amazing things have come. And so I didn't realize that. But when I was teaching about 8 years ago, I followed what was called my faith at that particular time. And obviously we're believers. And I struggled at one point in my life to really understand God and understand, did I believe in him and did I trust him? And faith at the time meant full assurance in the heart. If you do the acronym, and I love acronyms because I was a teacher and that's how I learned, full assurance in the heart, if you look at that word faith. And so for the first time, I followed my heart and I quit teaching, moved to San Diego, and the rest is history, and we'll talk about some of that. But that's what's led me to some of what I do now, because I really believe, John, you're a teacher, I'm a teacher, every single person is a teacher, and yet the Bible says if you're a prophesy, then prophesy, right? Yeah. And if you're a teacher, teach, and if your gift is X, Y, and Z, then do X, Y, and Z. And I think too often we try to be like somebody else that's gifted at something that we're not, and we try to emulate them, and then we fall into this trap of being miserable and terrible because it's not our God-given gifts. And so one of my gifts is teaching. It is connecting with people. It's being able to dissect and break down the complicated into the simple. And I think life is very simple, but we overcomplicate it as humans. And the more ease and grace you have in your life, the more success you're going to have. And so as we kind of elaborate and spend more time together, I'll share some of the stuff we're doing. But I want to at least set the pinnacle and the precedence for kind of where I'm coming from, because the truth of the matter is all of us have lane changes in our life. And it's those intricate times where we either choose to change lanes, mean get into a different vehicle that's going to drive us forward, or sometimes life circumstances force us to change. And so as we talk about this, sometimes we've got to change because life forces us to, and sometimes we've got to change because we're not happy with our circumstances in our life. And I was listening to Jim Rohn this morning, and the whole thing is, it's not the circumstances, it's not the government, it's not the state that you live in. It might be partly the family you were born into and, your opportunities. But the truth of the matter is it's all BS at the end of the day. And we can change everything because you look at all these successful people, some of which come from rags to riches and some that have all the opportunities in the world right in front of them and they never do anything with it. So it really comes back to us and our personal philosophy and our chances and our choices and what lane we get into, the vehicle that drives us, whether that's, business, faith, relationships, whatever it is. And so that's the foundation for what I think will be really helpful as we unpack a lot of this stuff today.
Okay, absolutely. What has been an inspirational quote or scripture over the last couple of years as you were making what you call your lane change? Did you have one?
Yeah. It's interesting that there's two of them. First of all, I'm going to share a story with you because this is what changed my entire life. And then I'll talk about one that's more recent that's really opened up my heart and my soul to surrender a little bit. And that's a very hard thing to do as a human, as a believer, and as an entrepreneur. But the first one really started my first career, if you want to call it that. I was making $0 as a salesman for a real estate investment firm when I'd moved to San Diego, California after I quit teaching. And so I had literally zero money coming in, but at least I had a direction. And a lot of times that's the best opportunity, and more people chase money than anything else. And, that's what I was doing, truth be told. But the reality is the direction is so much more important than speed. And a lot of people are going nowhere fast. And so at least I was going somewhere with a direction, and that was to flip homes and have a mentor teach me these things. And so I ended up going to the top of the company, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about that. The one person that changed my life was a prospect that never did a deal with me. And it was very interesting, John. Her name was Jenny. And I prospected her. I did my 7 follow-ups. I did my 8th follow-up. And at that point, I realized that productivity is more important than activity. And so I just moved on, right? And there's nothing wrong with that in sales. You've got to go to the people that are going to actually pay you at some point because we got to survive. But more important than the deal that we never did was the impact that she had in my life and that I had in hers. And so about a year after we kind of connected the first time, John, I was new to San Diego, went down to Torrey Pines, which is one of the most pristine beaches in the world. I love it. It's kind of my heaven on earth. And I was reading the Bible, and I had a compendium that was teaching me how to read the Bible because I didn't know how to read the Bible. I grew up in a Christian home, but I got very far from my faith. And so I'm sitting there on a June gloom day, as we call it, where the fog is over, and I'm wearing a hooded sweatshirt with board shorts and sandals, which is a lot of typical San Diegans, right? And I'm sitting there, 7:30 in the morning, and it's very interesting, John. Here's where your question comes in. As I was sitting there at my apartment before going to the beach, I opened up Facebook, and oftentimes, we think we want to go do something and we have an intention to go do something and we get sidetracked by what's easier. And so I opened up Facebook rather than going to the beach and reading the Bible. And the first post that I saw, don't even remember who it was from, but I thanked this person to today. And it was ask, seek, knock, Matthew 7:7. It was ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be opened. And I read that and it really hit my heart. And so I asked God, what should I do that morning? And that's when I went to the beach. And so I'm sitting down there, and all of a sudden this presence about a half an hour later starts coming and approaching me. It's just 8 o'clock in the morning at that point, and I'm scared to death because I'm reading the Bible, unknowing what's going on, and I feel God actually answering something for the first time, but I'm scared to death. I'm like, is this a spirit? I don't understand what's going on. And as this particular presence makes its way closer to me, I can read out the face and the countenance of this person, and it happens to be Jenny. We're the only 2 people on the beach. And she literally, John, that first day, she said, Lane, I absolutely hate you. And I was like, wow, thank you, Jenny, because I understood at that time doing some personal development that the truth of the matter is that she hated me out of her own life and the glasses that she was wearing and the paradigm that she had. I hadn't done anything wrong or right necessarily. And so she went on to say, Lane, your life seems so perfect and happy, and you're abundant, and you're in shape, and you've got all this money, and yada, yada, yada. Little did you know some of the things that were actually truly going on, and that's okay. And so the next thing she said, John, was I absolutely love you to death, and I need to thank you because I've been following you for about 9 months, printing off things that you put on social media. And again, remember, John, this isn't about me, right? It's not to impress you, but as Les Brown says, to impress upon you the importance that sometimes we need to do things in our own life when it sucks to help somebody else that we don't even know that we're blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she goes on to explain that she had been in bed at a hospital for 9 months with a 1% chance of living with a collapsed lung. And this was the first day out of the hospital in 9 months, and her boyfriend was driving her home to go rest again. And she literally looked at me and she said, Lane, if I don't make it home or if I die on the way home, at least I got to feel the sand beneath my toes one more time. Wow. And it really reminded me that, we take for granted some of the very simplistic things that we get. And I was literally there every morning, and I didn't take, full advantage of it or be thankful for it. And it really hit me, and I'll tie that in later as we kind of share that story and what it's done for my life. But, I really realized at that moment that this isn't about me. It's about me doing what God has planned for me because other people need me to do that. And when I don't want to go lift in the morning, I get up for them. And yes, it's for me and my fiance to look good for her and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I want certain things and goals and dreams and aspirations. But the truth of the matter is, when we don't want to make that extra prospecting call, who do we know that we're letting down, right? We don't know. Jenny could have literally died because of not picking up the phone a year before, potentially. And I'm not taking credit for her staying alive by any means. God's the one that did that in her health and getting on a nutritional plan and all that kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is, when we don't feel like doing something, it's because we're selfish enough to not want to do it, not realizing who it might bless down the road. And so one of those verses is ask, seek, knock. And if you actually put that into an acrostic, you actually get ASK, which is ask. And so my whole life has been asking for what I want intentionally, because there's other Bible verses that suggest you have not asked in my name. And so a lot of times people take that out of context, just, hey, I'm going to ask for $1 million is going to show up tomorrow. Law of attraction, right? No, it's God's plan, but you've got to ask for the right doors to be open, knock on them. And when he opens them, actually walk through them, not complaining about the doorbell or the noise or that's there. And so that's been a great verse. And I'll share a second one if you want now, or I can share it later. Is literally, I've made a lane change in the last 2 weeks, and my life is going a completely different direction because of it. But for now, that's at least one of the ones that I really love and have implemented into my personal life, my relational life, and my spiritual, and obviously my entrepreneurial career as well.
Okay, so let's just tie two questions in at the same time. So I want to know how ask, seek, knock. I love the acronym on that. That's really cool. How are you going to tie that into your life journey for the last 10 years or whatever? I want to see what that looks like from where you started as a teacher, leaving, going into what you're doing now.
Yeah, great question. I think there's two lanes that we can go down. The first one is asking God for what his plan is for us and surrendering and listening to it.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. So perfect, because so many people, including myself, when I was younger, you just do what you think you need to do, when actually you talk about being led by the heart, but that's also asking the Holy Spirit to lead us. So
absolutely.
I want to go down that lane with you, talking about when you ask God which direction you should go and what that looks like. Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about the second one, because it's very important for, I think, anybody to be intentional about your asks, but also in entrepreneurship, it's very important. I'll give an example of what just happened to me yesterday. And it's happened over and over and over and over again. And it's just how life works when you're in the right lane. Because when you're in the right lane, there is no traffic. And you won't know what lane you're in the right lane until you actually see that there isn't any traffic. And even if there is traffic that gets in your way, you're willing to go through it. And so that's what you've got to ask for from God. It's what path, what gifts do I have? What unique message do I have? And so I really just started, and it actually happened once I hit the kind of pinnacle, if you want to call it that, in real estate of the top sales guy. A lot of my deals were falling through, and I realized a lot about systems, which suggests save yourself time, energy, and money, another acronym, and teamwork and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of my deals were falling apart, and I was getting frustrated. And then my car got repoed, and then my grandmother died, and I didn't have enough money to get back to Maryland, 3,500 miles across, to go to the funeral. And I had to ask my parents to gift me a plane ticket to go back. And S kind of hit the fan at one point, and my life wasn't as blissful as it seems, even though Jenny was looking at that saying, your life is perfect, right? She was seeing certain things. Right. And so I really just went on an intentional message of God, what do you really want from me? And Lane, are you willing to surrender and start doing that? And the honest truth is, over the last 8 years as an entrepreneur, I think I'm finally just really surrendering. And it's a process. You can't ask and then tomorrow, receive necessarily. Although sometimes when you do things long enough, when you ask over the last 8 years of your work, tomorrow might actually be the result. And so it's not instantaneous, but it might be instantaneous or feel that way as a quote unquote overnight success for the 8 years that you've been working, grinding every single day until midnight to do the things that you're doing. And so, for me, it was really asking, is money more important than the direction I'm going? Is fame and being a Leo, which I am, and love being on stage and being in front of people, more important than actually the message that you're delivering and helping other people? Or now, as I've built a company, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, but is it really important for me to be on stage, or is it more important for me to get people and teach them how to speak on stage so that they can be on stage, so that they're more important? I'm in the background, and the company grows even more because they're the key influencers, right?
Yeah.
And so it's humbling yourself and putting your ego aside, edging God out, right? We've heard that before. That's ego. And so that's part of it. And I think the process just simply goes by asking consistently, intentionally, and seeing the results. And that's part of it as well, because you can ask all day, but if you never take action on that, then you're never really going to get into the right lane for you, because you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And so I think it's taking risks. I think it's taking chances, and trying different things. You know, Kevin Harrington is one of the guys from Shark Tank, and he's in our new book called Life in the Fast Lane. We become friends. We're actually doing a deal together, which is wild, right? In and of itself. But he has a kind of law of curiosity, and he suggests that you really got to go out there and find out what's right for you, and be willing to do some crappy things and do some really fun things to find out what your zone is and what's right for you. And so I've done a lot of different things from, I was literally a bagel delivery boy for my first job, and I sold magazines on the streets, which is terrible, but that was my first sales position, and I really learned how to talk to people and influence people and get them to give me their credit card. And so I've done a full range of different things, and from teaching and then speaking and then network marketing and real estate, and a lot of different avenues or lanes that have kind of helped me figure out what do I enjoy doing, what am I good at, and then from there actually taking the action behind it, because just because you found your lane doesn't mean that you're going to make money or be successful or help enough people.
Lane, I want to cut you real quick. You mentioned, I think so many people would look back and say, well, I've done all these things, I don't know what I want to be, and people would look at it as sometimes as a failure to think, well, for instance, what you said, I've done bagels, I've sold magazines, I've done network marketing, I've done all these things. But within that, each thing you found what I would call gold inside of you. At what point did you really recognize you're like, hey, I'm refining gifts and talents inside of me? Was there a point where you just thought, oh man, even though I've done all these things, there's a common theme going on, and I'm really realizing what I'm good at, what I'm called to do? Did you kind of have a moment within that where you look back and you were starting to see the accumulation of all those things?
Yes, a couple different times, but I would suggest for the listeners, there's a time in which you're going to look back and say, man, I wish today that I could do something different. Knowing all that I know and every experience that I've had, I wish I could do back then what I know now, right? How many times have we said that? And the answer is, great, then start today.
I love it.
Because if you're wishing that you could do something different today based on all the wisdom and knowledge, then go do that. And you can start over. And unfortunately, starting over is terrible sometimes, but it gives you an open door and an open avenue to go really do that. So I started asking myself that question, and then coupling that, John, I think that you've got to seek counsel and wisdom rather than opinion. And that's very important. That's one of my mentors taught me. So don't listen to the people that haven't reached results that tell you, oh, you shouldn't do this or you should do that. Listen to the people that have and can give you legit counsel. But understand that if you keep hearing a repeating theme in your life, maybe that's a clue, because success leaves clues, and start to look at that. And one of mine was every time I spoke, somebody would come up to me and say, Lane, thank you so much. Your message was powerful. I'm impressed, and I'm going to go do something because of it. And when you have people breaking down in tears because you sent a message to them and it hit them at the right time, those were many different clues to me that, hey, I do have a voice, and it's not an ego thing. It's that God has given me a voice that happens to resonate with people, not everybody, but the fact of the matter is that when I speak, if one person appreciates and values it, then maybe I should go do that again and again and again.
So Lane, I want to talk about that. So at what point did you pivot or make that change? So you start recognizing, okay, I'm good at speaking, influence, I'm changing. Obviously you found your gift. You were operating in your God-given gift. At what point did you say, hey, I need to make that shift or that change? I want to journey there to see how you did it and kind of the process, because that's hard sometimes. It's hard for all of us. But how did you do? I guess for what you would say, how did you change lanes?
Yeah, good question. Well, let me suggest this. To answer the question that you just asked, I think when your aptitude comes into the intersection with your best attitude, that's when you make a lane change, and that's when you found your gift.
Okay.
Because it's the combination of the both of those. And so don't hear me what I'm not saying, which is when you find your perfect lane that everything's going to be easy. No, it's working on your skill set after you've found the gifts and increasing both of those over time that will eventually give you the ability to really have some success. And so my fiance now, geez, I say girlfriend, we've been engaged for 4 months now. I'm still used to that. We were talking yesterday, and it's one of those things where if you want to expedite or accelerate your dreams and accelerate your success plan, you've got to work on your skills with massive action and passion behind that. And when you do that, that's when it is. So if you're passionate and you are gifted at it, but you don't have the skill set, you've got to go work on the skill set. And the more you work on your skill set and your craft, the faster that acceleration plan will happen. If you've got massive skills and massive passion behind it, but the action isn't there, well, then you've got to increase that action. And when you put that triad together, the trinity of those three things, right, then you're going to have an accelerated plan. And so for me, it was actually the moment in which my life was terrible and I was excited and I was hungry and I was like, yeah, I'm the next guy and, I'm going to be the next best motivational speaker and inspirational speaker and people are going to pay me millions to be on stage. Well, the reality is that I didn't have one presentation under my belt. And so I started by actually going to, let me back up. I got gifted an opportunity to speak on stage because I was the top sales guy. They asked me fearfully. I said yes. And I fell in love with the energy and the gift that I felt on stage the first time, where 4 people wanted to buy a $10,000 program. And I'd never sold from stage before in my life. I wasn't even selling. I was just giving my experience. And here's the difference, John. I will tell you this. When I started out, on my journey across the country, I really discovered that personal development is so key. And so I read a book called Think and Grow Rich, which was after Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I adopted some of the principles in Napoleon Hill's book because R.U. Darby in the beginning of the book had moved from Maryland to California to strike it rich during the gold strike. And I was very similar. I moved from Maryland to California to, become wealthy, quote unquote. And I just became part of that character. But here's the interesting thing, John. After that book, I read a book called 3 Feet from Gold. And 3 Feet from Gold was a follow-up to the Napoleon Hill book of Think and Grow Rich to see in 2007, are the principles still the same? And so I read this book at a time in which my life wasn't that great. And so I bought a yardstick. My car had been repoed, so I had to bike down to Staples. And I carried this yardstick everywhere for what ended up being 400 days. And my life changed dramatically during those 400 days because people would come up to me and my stick kind of became my shtick, and I wasn't doing for that. It was a physical reminder for me to not give up. But what ended up happening is I met the author at the first event that I was speaking at of that book, and kind of serendipity, or what I call a Kairos moment, which is the name of my second book is Kairos, when God intervenes in your life and brings opportunities and people into it in order to give you an aha moment and say, wow, this might be something that I should explore. And so we became friends, and he invited me to be a co-author in his book with Les Brown and Brian Tracy. And so I said yes. I didn't have the money. It was something like $6,000 to do it. And I figured out a way to do it because I knew that if I want to get on more stages, a book would be a good tool and vehicle to do that. And so I said yes. And then I'm a best-selling author with these 3 guys. And, from there I had a awesome business card that I could then go use to get on stages and podcasts and all these different things that I've done over the last couple of years of doing this. And so I think that was the key moment where, it was serendipity or intervention or a Kairos moment met with discovering my gifts and actually feeling good about being a speaker through that fear. And those kind of combination of those 2 things at least gave me the inclination that maybe this is something that I could do. But let me tell you this, John, most people will never, ever do that, and they won't ever do anything with it. And so it's very important that people actually take the next step. Martin Luther King says, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take that first step. And so I remember back when I bought my $35,000 real estate investment program, I discovered, even though I was broke and I started my whole career $35,000 in debt, I didn't buy real estate courses to go do real estate. I bought it because I remember being in my first event ever that happened to be a real estate event, and I realized that the guy on stage was good, but I could be him. And so if it meant real estate was the vehicle to get on stage, then that's great. But over 7 years without doing anything with that, right?
Yeah.
That was partly the process of, wow, it was in my head. It was a seed that was planted, but seed needs to land on what? Fertile ground.
Yeah.
Not on right? A rock. And so it was very important that you understand that most people will never take action on what they have that tug on their heart because they're too afraid of failing. And what I say is roadblocks become the fear that holds you back from your dreams. And so there's going to be roadblocks in every single thing that you do. Break through it anyway and go do it. And so most people, when they even experience that, oh my God, this is it, this is what I'm called to do, guess what they do? 99% of them go back to their job or go back to their abusive relationship, or they go back to drinking or drugs or whatever their vice is because it's comfortable for them and they're never going to actually go do anything with it. And Les Brown says that, most of the wealth in the world is 6 feet underground because we never ever do anything with it. And so the honest truth is the people that are creating success, they just go do it. They do it consistently and they separate themselves from all the wannabes because they never actually do anything with it anyway.
So was there a time as you're making this transition, obviously for you it's been an uphill climb at the beginning, was there a moment where you had to just press through? You talk about that yardstick that you carried around.
Uh-huh.
I mean, do you have a moment, do you remember like a story that you could share with us where you literally had to just grasp onto that yardstick and say, I'm going to press through this because there is gold on the other side?
Yes, there was one in particular. I won't necessarily share that because it's a combination of going through hell. And when I realized when you go through hell, you better sprint to get past it as fast as you can. And so it was a combination of a relationship ending and my grandmother dying and my car getting repoed and feeling like I was chasing money, which wasn't my passion and dream in the first place. And so it was a combination of a bunch of things that I realized, wow, let me push through all of this, because if I can get through this, then I can get through anything. And if whatever happens in my life down the road, I can look back on this continuation of hell and really realize that heaven is not that far away. And so it was kind of a combination. But let me talk about a principle that I think is very important, because I learned it when I was teaching, and I told you in the beginning of this that I would mention this, and this might help for everybody that might be in that situation right now, because I know that there's somebody listening right now that is having a struggle, that they're having a challenge that they're not sure that they want to get through. And I want to make sure that I teach a principle and then share a story before we wrap this thing up at some point about how important it is for this. But as an entrepreneur, when I was teaching middle school math, Pythagorean theorem suggested a squared plus b squared equals
C squared.
C squared.
Yeah,
and so
I remembered.
There you go, baby. And you can figure out C with A and B, or you can figure out B with A and C, or A with C and B. It doesn't matter. And whether you remember the theorem or not, or how to do it, understand this principle. The kids in my class that struggled the most were the ones that didn't have basic arithmetic skills. In order to be able to do that, then you can put that into order, PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, to then get the order of operations you need to create the theorem of Pythagorean, right? And so without the base foundational principle, you cannot succeed and build upon that. And too often as entrepreneurs, we do our best to say, hey, we want to be a millionaire. Well, you haven't even made $100,000. How in the world are you going to become a millionaire? Oh, you want to make six figures? Why don't you make your first 1,000? And I'm not saying wherever you are, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a 10 millionaire. To get to the next level, you've got to go back to the foundational principles and do that. Same thing with working out. John, you and I were talking, about your wife and how amazing she is at what she does. And, you guys are very fit and active, and I am as well, because I've lost 63 pounds. But in order to lose 63 pounds, I can't do that in a day. I've got to eat right. I've got to continue to eat right over and over and over again, sacrifice not going to McDonald's or not drinking 2 liters of Coke like I used to do all the time when I was 63 pounds overweight. And I've got to make those simple habit changes in order to do that on a consistent basis in order to create success. And so I think too often that we just want, the entire bucket without, doing the first step. And so one thing that I've discovered, as I was a middle school math teacher over the summers, I was a camp counselor. And if you remember, John, this particular contraption, I believe it was at King's Dominion, we would go to amusement parks every day. And if you remember, at a water park, there's this big, huge bucket, right? And this entire bucket was filled with water, and it would count down 5, 4, 3, 2, and all this water would dump into other buckets underneath of it. And those would get uneven. They would topple under to smaller buckets underneath it. Eventually, it would cleanse us because we were in 110-degree heat with 100% humidity in Virginia. And so I remember looking at that and not at the time recognizing this, but as I grew in my personal development and as I started to understand Zig Ziglar's concept of helping enough people get what they want before you get what you want, I really realized that we all are buckets and we've got to fill ourselves up with water. But here's the challenge. It's not how much you can fill your bucket up, right? There's going to be holes in our bucket, and it's how quickly can you fill the hole. Because if you can't fill that hole quick enough, then you're going to leak out and you can't pour in other people as much as you need. And so we've got to be balanced in our lives. And yes, the one thing by, Gary Keller suggests that you've got to do one thing really, really well. Go do that. But you got to have at least some balance in your life, because if you just focus on one thing, your relationships are going to go to hell. Your physical health is going to go to hell, or your bank account is going to go to hell. And so there is a concept of having balance, but doing really one thing as well as you can do, and do that until you reach success, and then move on to the next thing if you want to go do something else and challenge yourself. And so I hope that helps with every single person that's on here, because it's a continuous journey of doing that. And at the end of the day, when you've gotten that extra mile and you go that extra mile, there isn't any traffic, because most people aren't willing to go that far anyway.
Okay, I want to jump into one thing. You talked about in math that you felt, or you saw that the kids that succeeded the best had basic principles. Okay, You talk about foundational principles. What are basic foundational principles that we need to succeed that you've seen that people need in their lives?
Your personal philosophy. What do you believe? And use the concept of hand in the sand, for example. Hand in the sand suggests that when you go to the beach, and I'm sitting there right now in the Atlantic Ocean, our place overlooks the ocean, and it's phenomenal. And if I were to go grab a mound of sand, some of it's going to stay in my hand and some of it's going to slip through, right?
Yes.
That's life. So if John is to say, hey, I know you're on this new quest of 4 days of getting back to 9% body fat, which I am on the journey of, you should do this, 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 and this. Well, what I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to take what I believe that you're saying that is accurate for my philosophy and adapt it into that. The other thing is I'm just going to let slip through my hands and just say, thank you. I appreciate that info. Right now, that does make sense for me.
Okay. How would
the same is true. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. As a Christian, like a basic, what have you grasped biblically that have been foundational principles for your success scripturally?
I would say going back to ask, seek, knock. I really do believe that that's the case, because you've got to ask for abundance in your life. You've got to ask for the challenges, and when you go through those challenges, because God says you are going to have trouble. It literally tells us every single day in the Bible that we are going to have trouble in our lives, and it's for the grace, and it's for the courage, and it's for the ability to get through that and to become stronger on the other end. So I think that the mindset that you have about going through life, that every single thing is Him teaching you lessons rather than challenging you and making you upset and frustrated, I think is very, very important. And you asked for the Bible verse that I mentioned, ask, seek, knock. I will tell you the other one. Okay. And I think this is very, very, very important. And this has happened to me over the last little bit of time. And literally our lives have changed completely. And I can share as much as you want depending on the time that we have. But the other one is Philippians 4:6 for me. And that is that do not be anxious in all things, but in prayer, petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And so there's some common theme there. Present your request to God. That goes back to ask, seek, knock, but it's with prayer and petition, and not to be anxious. And over my whole life, and I think every single person on this call, we want things immediate, instant gratification. Well, delayed gratification is one of the biggest success principles in life. We cannot have everything we want tomorrow. It's not possible. We've got to be willing to do that, and I call it aggressive patience. So you've got to be aggressive in every single day, going after what you want, but you've got to be patient enough to allow God to set the things up in order for those to be fulfilled. And so as we were traveling, we went on a 120-day road trip starting January 31st of this year. And we traveled to all 48 states. We drove the entire country, 30,000 miles on the car, flew to Hawaii at the end for the 49th state, which is where I proposed to my beautiful fiance. And it was a journey of us getting out of our comfort zone, having a plan, but also surrendering completely to the path that was set out and maybe making lane changes along the way. And what I've discovered, John, is that during this trip, I really discovered that there's a roadmap and a set of directions. A roadmap, if I were to say, hey, John, I want to come see you, I could get to your home in an infinite number of ways, right?
Yes.
If you give me the roadmap to get there the fastest with a set of directions, I'm going to get there easier, faster, with less gas, which is going to save me money, a lot of stress, and we can spend more time together because I got there quicker. And so mentorship, right? Mentorship is that. Too many people don't want to show up to events. They don't want to spend money on personal development. They don't want to buy books. They don't want to get a mentor because it costs money. Guess what? It's going to cost you one way or another. Why not invest it? Costing you money sucks. Investing money should make it for you. And so that's what I believe to be the case. And then you've got to have a roadmap. You've got to at least have some options, but then you got to have a set of directions to get there, because it will help you with the ease of the struggle and the challenge. But even when you face that, right, you're going to be able to get it through because you can see that destination. And one last kind of philosophy, I know I have a lot of them, and we're just rapid firing here, But on this road, right, this quest that you're on, this expedition, it's interesting, John. What happens is people are physically driving and a bug hits their windshield. 100% of people will focus on what?
The bug. They focus on that one thing on their shield because it makes a mess.
Of course, instead of the 99.9% of the windshield that's wide open, so that we spray that little mist on our thing, we put our windshield wipers on, it streaks, and then we look at the streak. And so what we need to do is refocus our vision and what we're doing, because without vision, a man perishes. And we've got to look where we're going, because if we just focus on that bug and we stare at that bug, we're literally going to veer off the road to our demise. And too often when we get cancer, when we go through a divorce, when we have to file Chapter 7 or 11 bankruptcy, or we start a career that sucks and it doesn't work out for us, we focus on that. And that literally will take us to our death. Instead, say, okay, this sucked. It was not a fun experience. I get it, God. What are you teaching me through that? What do I need to do differently? And it's not the end all be all, because I'm still alive. I'm breathing, and therefore I have choice, and therefore I can change what I'm doing and go create success despite the terrible incident that would just happen. And I'm not suggesting that those things aren't terrible. I've been through those. My mom is a 34-year breast cancer survivor. My dad had quadruple bypass surgery, right? There are complications that happen in your life or your family's life. I've been, attacked by the IRS, and I've had my car repossessed. It didn't stop me. It sucked, and I had to learn through that. Okay, what do I do differently? How do I not go through this again, right? And so each experience that we have teaches us, and hopefully will give us the foundational principles that I was talking about with Pythagorean theorem, that we build up in our own lives to have that foundational thing to go back to, because we do have to build our house on solid rock, not sand.
I love what you talk about, the scripture you talk about. The end of that scripture says, but Jesus says, I've overcome the world. Don't fear, but I've overcome the world. And so many times we don't see the end of that scripture that say, if we are in Christ, Christ is in us, scripturally, that we are overcomers. And a lot of times we are going to have trouble. We're going to have tribulation. There's going to have problems. But Christ says, we're going to overcome those things. And it's just a matter of pressing through.
Absolutely.
So, I love that.
One other thing real quick, because Philippians 4:7, I just talked about 4:6. 4:7 says, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so you've got to understand that you may not understand why you're going through that. And yes, you're anxious, and yes, you want results now, and yes, you want this. But the truth of the matter is that he's protecting you through that, right? Yeah. And you can't understand, you can't humanly fathom why you're going through what you're going through, because God does. And when you worry about things, anxious just equates to worrying. Worrying is praying for what you don't want. And so when we worry about, I'm not going to get this job, I'm not going to get this house, that girl doesn't want to date me, yada, 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 guess what? You're bringing that in, and you're praying for what you don't want, and that's going to attract what you do. More of what you don't, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so we have to focus that bug, right? That's the worrying. That's the anxiety. We've got to transform that and look at what's possible, understanding that the bug splat is a learning lesson for us to continue to move forward and drive in the direction that we need to get to where our ultimate goal is.
Yeah, I love your analogies, man. They're beautiful. I mean, they're very helpful. Lane, what do you feel like your biggest strength in your gifting is in the area that you operate?
I'm great with people. I love people. They're what drive me. And, most people aren't. I'm an extrovert. I'm an ENFP, if you've ever done any strength finders or Myers-Briggs or disc tests and everything. And so people are giving me energy, so I love being around them. So I do. I love people. Communication is a gift that I have that I've really, really worked on as well and studied a lot of. But I'm naturally, kind of a talker. And it was funny. I was my fiance's family and my family are going to meet for the first time. And, my dad said, are we going to be able to talk? Because between you and your soon-to-be father-in-law, are we going to be able to say anything?
That's awesome.
But at the same time, here's something that's really important. I am a talker. But I have learned in sales to shut up and to ask questions, and that it's not about me, and to not be a peacock, because that's what I naturally am, but it's not about me. So I've got to hone that in. And as a communicator and as a salesperson, I need to understand that I'm not important, that my message is by asking questions and getting them to their own answers, right, as a coach. And then I can impart some wisdom and knowledge into their life that hopefully they take and run with. So I would say that it's people, it's communication, and then I get called a con artist a lot. and it's something I have to work through because I'm always positive, I'm happy, and the truth of the matter is that people think that I'm fake, and I'm not. I interviewed for one of my books a guy named Rodney Franks, and Rodney Franks it was the youngest CEO of a foundation. He's raised $250 million for nonprofits, and he's just an amazing Christian guy, and he's phenomenal. And he was, before I interviewed him, right the day after, he was going on a 10-day European trip, and he said, look, the same person I am on social media is the same person I am in person. Most people put their best front forward, right? And that's why everybody thinks, oh, their life is so good. I'm vulnerable through everything. But at the end of the day, I'm super happy and positive because I realize that that's the only thing that we really have. Your attitude is what you can control. And so if you're around me long enough, I'm going to crack a bunch of jokes. They're probably going to be inappropriate. And I'm going to lighten up the room, and I'm going to walk in with tons of energy because that's just what I am. But I've also worked on it, and I understand that the vibrational energy that is put out through gratitude alone scientifically is proven that when you're grateful for things, you exude this energy that attracts people to you. And so, yes, I do it partly because that's who I am, but I also do it because it's a gift to give to other people. That most people in the world are, I call them Eeyores, right? or donkeys. And I hate to say it, but they walk around, oh, life sucks. Oh, there's an election coming up. Oh, Clinton's going to be elected, or Trump sucks, or whatever it is. My life is not good. I was born into this family. Oh, and they just literally meander through life complaining about everything. And unfortunately, I just don't hang out with those people. Love them to death unconditionally. But the reality is, I love you to death. Let me help you become somebody different. If you're willing to, and if you're not, go live your life. And I hope that, Jesus intervenes in it at some point and says, look, you're not supposed to live your life like this. You're supposed to be happy. I want you to be abundant. I have a plan to prosper you and have hope in the future.
I love what you're talking when you talk about attitude. I did an interview. This was several episodes back. The guy's name's Michael McIntyre, but he makes a comment. He says, "If you don't have a personality, go rent one." And, man, dude, I about fell over when he said that. So, hey, I want to ask you real quick. You talked about taking Myers-Briggs. You're talking about taking a disc test. Those things. Mm-hmm. For our listeners, how helpful did you? I love them personally. How helpful did you find taking tests to kind of see your personality, things you're good at? Was that pretty helpful for you?
Yeah, I think, yes, it has been. And everybody has a way in which they learn. There's certain modalities that people learn from. And so it's just an awakening process. And it may not be a revolutionary process when you first take the test. It is pretty amazing when you take certain ones where you're like, holy geez, how in the world, by asking, a left or a right question, that don't make any sense, how in the world could they read me perfectly? And so, yeah, I think it's amazing to do those, but it's also then the experiential process that you have to start seeking out what are your real gifts and what do you truly do? Because most people, when they take them, they say, that's not me. That, I'm this, I'm that, and the other. And the reality is that they're pretty on point to know that it's not God, right? But it is kind of a proven science that suggests that you are that way. And it really just enlightens you. And I've got some coaching clients right now that, for people that are listening, I would encourage you guys to find an organization company called EntrePurpose. Rusty and Brian are amazing. They're clients of ours that we're really helping them grow their business. But they literally walk you guys through that, and they take you through a process in order to understand that. And then what do you do with that? And so it's an amazing organization. And so, yes, I would encourage every single person that hasn't done that to take them and then start to learn and experience what those are in your life, and do they actually resonate with you? And then how do you go implement those in? Because here's the thing. Most people will never do their natural gifts over and over again, and that's why they struggle, and that's why they hate life, and that's why they're miserable. And so I think it's absolutely important. But, John, I would encourage people to couple that with live events where you can understand and people can dissect and break it down for you, and you can start to see. Because here's the thing. When I go to events now, yes, I want to network. Yes, I want to learn. But I partly go because I'm a speaker, and I want to learn, wow, I really like that technique that guy used. That was terrible. I would never use that in my personal, philosophy. Or, wow, the audience is literally quiet right now. There are people crying. What in the world did that speaker just do in order to create that? And so I go to learn. I go to watch, and I learn to emulate, because I do have gifts and I am good at it, but I'm not great. And I've got to be good to great in order to be that. And so there's a lot of events. And the reason I'm mentioning that is when you're at events and you're around people, they can really help you if they're good at it, encourage you and support you through that. And so everybody that's doing this, I want to understand this. If people are going to discourage you, which they're going to, don't listen to them unless they're discouraging you because they have a gift that's going to help you understand who you truly are. I don't listen to people who has opinions of me, unless it's an opinion that's actually pertinent because they understand me better than I do, or they understand that I can do this better than that. That's called mentorship, right? And mentors tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Those are your friends that you go to the bar with. Hang out with them to have a beer and watch the football games and let them, talk about your life. But then when they go home and they're miserable, just go live your life and be happy. And so all of that combined is very, very important, not just one individual test.
So Lane, what would you say when you operate in your strengths? Have you found that there's a weakness that comes from that?
I have a lot of weaknesses, and it took a lot of time to own those, and it took a lot of time to be vulnerable with them and trust them and know. But I've been taught to work your strengths and hire your weaknesses, and not just work your strengths, but grow your strengths.
So what would you say a weakness is for you, though?
I'm terrible with computers. I'm not very good with organization. I'm very organized. You look at my house, it's very clean, but I'm not organized in terms of, bills and some of that stuff. So digital marketing, I get it. I understand it. I studied enough to know who I need to hire. But my VP is way better than me. He just worked with the top digital marketing guy in the entire world for the last 4 months, and he's been on my team for a year. And so I just said, yeah, go do that, of course. I don't care if you don't do anything with me for the next 4 months. Go learn, because when you come back, guess what? We're gonna grow even faster. And so outsourcing is very, very important because I know my weaknesses and I know what I can't do well, and therefore I surround myself with people that are better at it. So it's very important to know your strengths, but it's also just as important through those tests that you asked about to know your weaknesses, because you got to stop doing those. I mean, the honest truth is, if you can just focus 90% of your effort on your strengths, hire people in order to do your weaknesses, or at least build your weaknesses a little bit so you know them, so that the things that you do have to do, because you can't just do 100% of what you want to do. There's a lot of things that we have to do, right, in order to get what we want. You got to do the things that you need to do as long as you want, or need until you can do the things you want as long as you want. And so it's not just blissful life where, hey, this is what I'm good at, so I'm never going to do what I'm bad at. No, challenge yourself, right? Be competitive and do those types of things and hang out with people that are better than you, because obviously your strengths may not be as strong as somebody else's, and so you can continue growing your strengths. But again, more people focus on that bug, their weakness, and they say, oh, this is so hard. Oh, my job isn't good, or this isn't fun. Well, of course it's not going to be, because you don't enjoy it. But guess what? Volunteering. Sophie, my fiance, and I went around the country and we looked for volunteering positions everywhere we could. It's really hard to volunteer, first of all, and I hate that about it. And I might get into something like that, because we literally begged and pleaded to go volunteer, and they're like, well, we don't want you. And we're like, all right, well, we'll go find somebody that does. But the reason I'm mentioning that is volunteering is work. It's not always fun necessarily. Now, if you find something you enjoy doing, then volunteering becomes easier. But going to serve people is not always fun. They're not grateful. They're not appreciative. They have their life circumstances that they may take it out on you. And so my point being that doing things that are good for the kingdom aren't always easy, not always fun, but necessary.
All right, that's you talk about doing things for the kingdom. How do you share your faith in the gospel? Not all of us are pastors or street evangelists, things like that, but we're all called to share the gospel with people and the love of Christ to and through people through us. How do you implement that? What does that look like in your life?
Well, I think I'll go back to what I said earlier is, if you're good at teaching, then go teach. If your gift is X, Y, and Z, then go do X, Y, and Z. I really think that, part of the best way, can I evangelize? Yes. Do I do it? Sure, when the opportunity presents itself. But the truth of the matter is that if you walk through life with a smile, passionate about what you do, happy as often as you can be, vibrant, I really think that that's my gift. And when people ask me, or they say, man, what the heck is going on in your life? Like, what, it's an open door for you to say, you know what? The truth of the matter is that I'm a son of God, and nothing else really matters. And I'm very blessed to know him and the relationship I have with him. And people are blown away. They're like, if believers get it, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why you're happy, right? Non-believers, you just planted what I call a ninja nugget in their brain, which is going to beat around. It's going to kick them in their head until they finally realize, whoa, you might not see the result of that, because you may be the person that opened up their mind to, wow, this guy's so happy and his life is so good. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but at least he's happy and enjoying life because he has a relationship with Christ. And then they meet somebody else, and then they get invited to church, and then they get into a Bible study or whatever it is. So we're catalysts for other people. We're not the answer for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's important to what you're good at, do it the best you can. What you're not good at, don't. And don't necessarily try to do what you're not good at, because it's going to be hard and you could actually turn people away from Christ. let somebody else who's good at that do that for you. Right? Introduce them, say, hey, look, if you really want to learn the Bible, I don't know it. I know a couple of verses and I can recite them because I'm a speaker and it sounds all good, right? But if you really want to learn the Bible, why don't you go talk to a theologist? Let me introduce you to somebody. You guys go have lunch.
Yeah, put them in the right direction.
Absolutely. And that's what life is about. We're not supposed to be good at everything. We don't. And people try to sell everybody on everything. Oh, I can help you with everything. No, you can't. Don't buy something from somebody that's saying that, because they're not. They're BS artists. They're really good at certain things. And yes, they may have a company that can help you with everything. We do that at some level. But the reality is that they're not. And so you've got to be very cautious about people who, claim certain things and this and that and the other. And again, so just be on a swivel, keep your head on a swivel. I love football. And, if you're going to get tackled, you better know that it's coming, or else it's going to hurt even more. And so just in life, just be on a swivel, look for opportunities, see where your gifts are and where your accomplishments come naturally and easily, and then go do that over and over again, and then help other people do that. And I really think that's the best way to serve the kingdom, because we can do that better than anybody else that might have the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. What is what's like a resource or a recent book that you've read that you would, you've talked a lot about motivational things that you've read. I've heard you talk about Zig Ziglar. You've several names you've dropped. What is a good resource or book that you would recommend for our listeners?
There's an awesome book called Changing Lanes by an author named Lane Ethridge. No, I'm
yes.
Just kidding. No, here I do have 2 #1 best-selling books, and so I would encourage people to get those. I was just recommended, and I have not read it yet, so I'm going to tell you something that you shouldn't listen to my counsel because I haven't read it, but it was recommended to me, and I want to tie this in as we kind of wrap up with something that I suggested I was going to mention about asking. But I was just recommended The Freedom Journal by a guy named John Lee Dumas, who is one of the best podcasters in the world. And John, you may want to, get connected with him and listen to some of his stuff as you build your podcast.
I do. But I got into podcasting from listening to him, so I'm very familiar with his stuff.
There you go. So Entrepreneur Fire. And here's the awesome thing, John. It's epic. It's amazing. So I would encourage you guys to get that, just because I was recommended it by somebody I truly believe in, and because I love her enough and I trust her enough, I would recommend that book, even though I haven't gotten it. I did just recently, the most recent book that I read on a plane was called Tribes, which is really just helping people really understand, and it's been around for a long time now, but that you are a leader, you need to become a leader, and that the world is calling you to become a leader. And so that's a great one. And a book that I think is really, really powerful that's been around forever is The Purpose-Driven Life. I go back to that a lot. It actually helped Michael Phelps, if you were watching the Olympics at all, recommended by Ray Lewis, who was he's a football player, now retired, but he's friends with Michael Phelps, recommended that book. And now Michael Phelps, now being suicidal and everything, is now how to perfect his passion, and he swims for God, right? And it's just an amazing story. And so that's a great book, and I could go on and on and on and on. But let me wrap up with this last thing, or we can talk as long as you want, but I know we've got a time limit. I mentioned that ask, seek, knock, and ask, you've got to ask God, because praying is seeking God, right? Okay. And meditation, I just recently learned, even though I don't personally do it necessarily, but I'm going to start, is listening for God.
Yes.
And so it's very important to do both. And so it's a practice that I need to, and a discipline that I want to incorporate into my life. But again, the ask thing, you got to ask. And again, I'm a sales guy. Ultimately, I love selling. I'm great at it. I'll get your credit card at some point if it makes sense and it's going to serve you. If not, then I'm not going to take it because it doesn't make sense. I don't want your money just because I want it. I want it because we can help you move forward and do something different with your life. But I've got the skills and I've learned how to do that. But here's what I'm saying. When you ask in entrepreneurship, sometimes you got to ask for favors and humble yourself. Sometimes you got to ask for introductions. And what I love about it is the number one skill that I think every single entrepreneur needs is the ability to prospect.
Yes.
Prospecting for your own business, but also prospecting to build a network of people that you can introduce other people to that you can't help them with. I built a huge foundation of amazing people in my life that I can say, look, I can't help you with that. I don't want your money. I don't need you, whatever. Just look, I appreciate you. Go talk to this person. If it makes sense, go work with them. And that's what we need to prospect. But here's the interesting thing, John, just since we mentioned his name. I'm writing a book right now called Life in the Fast Lane. And it's a collaborative book. I've interviewed Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, the founder of Priceline, the founder of Make-A-Wish, the guy that invented the magnetic strip on credit cards. Just amazing people. The guy that actually started QVC, that funded the initial thing, a world record holder, a 4-time Pro Bowl NFL quarterback, just amazing, amazing people. And I've interviewed them. How did you get in the fast lane? What is it that you have done? And I'm putting that into a book, and it's going to be available at some point. And open to having contributors be in there. So the same gift that I was given to be in my first book, that's an option. And if people want to be in that, we can talk about that. But here's why I mentioned that. I was going through and adding value, as John Maxwell says, who's another amazing person I really believe you should listen to on leadership. He suggested adding value is the best. And so I went and I shared an event that I truly believe in that I can't be at because I'm going to be speaking that weekend in Chicago, and this event is in San Diego. It's called Thrive. And it's got John Asseroff, and it's got Jack Canfield and Nick Unsworth in San Diego, and Cole Hatter, who's actually putting it on, and all these amazing people, right? And so I just shared it. Just simply wanted to serve them and hopefully help fill events because I know how hard that is to do because we do live events. And so I just said, you know what? Why don't I ask these people? I believe in the concept. Why don't I ask these key leaders who have massive following if they want to be in the book? And so I messaged John Lee Dumas, and I literally just said, hey, look, I appreciate what you do. I just ordered your book, even though I don't even really know who you are. I mean, I know Entrepreneur on Fire and I follow him. But the reality is I wanted to just serve him. And I said, look, as a gift to you, why don't I interview you, put you in the chapter, and we'll expose you to a new group of people, and then you can be in the book with all these different people. And he wrote back and said, awesome, the 15th at 9:30 a.m., let's interview and let's do this thing. And it was just simply by asking, because guess what? If he said no, it wasn't going to affect my life. I wasn't going to stop doing the book. It's still going to hit bestseller. We're still going to serve all the people that are in it. It's as simple as that. But now we have a new open option to maybe be on his podcast. And if not, guess what? I don't care. But it's at least a door to walk into later down the road. And maybe that we bring a new audience to him. And he's so grateful that we start doing work. You have to have power possibility in your life every single day. And yes, you need to have an intentional focus, but sometimes you need to humble yourself and get out of your own way and say, I'm going to serve this person without an intentional focus, without an outcome that I want to happen, but I'm hoping that this will happen as a result.
Man, lots and lots of wisdom, Lane. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. I want to ask you real quick, and we're about to wrap it up. Sure. If you got a chance to go visit the younger you get to go back in time, what age would you go back to, and what would you tell yourself?
Great question. I would probably go back. Well, can I answer that with 2 ages?
Sure, man. Let's do it.
I asked, right, and I received. It's interesting. I created a lot of limiting beliefs in my life because I was 63 pounds overweight. And this was during middle school. I would bike up every single day to my friend's house and order a medium supreme pizza from Pizza Hut and 2 liters of soda, and I would drink it every single day. And I got very overweight, even though I was active and our whole life was about sports. We didn't play video games, but I got overweight. And every single thing, John, that I did came back to that. If I got a B on a test instead of an A, it's because I'm fat. If, I didn't succeed in something, it's because I'm fat. If somebody didn't like me, it's because I'm fat. And I created this paradigm and this limiting belief that I wasn't going to be successful or happy or abundant because I was fat. And so I would actually go back to my, 13-year-old self and say, number one, stop eating like this. But 2, you know what? Just because of what the scale says doesn't say what your heart truly knows. Yes. Man, I love that. And so it's very important for every single person to understand that no matter what people judge you by, it's because of what they believe in the struggles in their own life that they're casting upon you. But at the same time, I was beating myself up because of the sunglasses that I was wearing and viewing myself from. So that would be one. And then I would go back to probably when I started my entrepreneurial career and say, dude, buckle up because you're about to change lanes and you have no idea what you're getting into. It's going to be hard as hell. And if you were actually to start this thing, you would never start it. But guess what? Buckle up because it's going to be the ride of your life and the journey that you will never imagine is possible. But make sure that you start by serving people more than you're going to be selfish in the beginning of your career. And if you do that, you will expedite the process to your goals and dreams faster than you can imagine. So stop being so selfish. Turn the me, the M in me into the W and create we, and create a collaborative competition that will change the world like you're doing ideally at this point in my career. Powerful, man. Powerful. Man, I can't say much about it. Hey, before we jump into parting thoughts real quick, I want to take a moment for our sponsor.
When your schedule is as busy as mine, seeing a doctor can be very difficult. But what if there was a service that can connect you to a U.S. board-certified physician anytime, anywhere? And what if I told you that it's as close and as easy as your telephone? 24/7 MedPlan is an amazing solution that provides telephone access 24/7 between patients and doctors. With medical costs rising and wait times at ERs and clinics getting longer, 24/7 MedPlan allows doctor consults that are on your schedule. What if it's 11 p.m. Saturday night and your child has a fever? Do you go to the ER, endure a 3-hour wait, and hundreds or even thousands of dollars in cost? Instead, you can talk live to a medical doctor right then in the comfort of your home, which may avoid a costly visit to the ER. That's peace of mind. Go to 24/7 MedPlan now and register to save time and money and get peace of mind. No deductibles, no contracts, all pre-existing conditions are covered. All for just $29.95 per month for your whole family at 24/7 MedPlan. So go now to Are You Real and click on the banner 247medplan.com and get peace of mind now.
All right, so Lane, I want to ask you one last thing, man. You've given us tons and tons of wisdom talking about changing lanes and giving value and me to we and all these different things. What is just one piece of parting advice you want to give our listeners?
Every single day is a gift, and it's so important to truly enjoy it despite anything that you may be going through. You've really got to understand that God, at the end of the day, he knows that heaven is a better place for you. And so if you're still here, why is that?
Yes.
You could be right next to him in heaven today, but he has you on earth for a purpose and a mission. And why in the world is that the case? You've got to discover that. And as somebody said, I don't remember who, but there's 2 days that are important in your life: the day you're born and the day you discover why, right?
Yeah.
And so as you waste your breath complaining about life, someone out there is breathing their last.
Wow.
And so until you get to your ultimate dead end, you better live life fully and completely, because you're going to look back as every person that's been interviewed on their deathbed. It's not I wanted more money. It's not I wanted more success. It's not I wanted this. It's I regret not doing this. It's man, I should have been a better father. It's man, I should have done this and spent more time with my kids. It's whatever it is. And so if those are the things that are on your heart, start doing those today. Live life. Enjoy every second of it, because when you live for every second and enjoy every minute of it, that's when you truly become a lane changer.
I love it. Before we jump into, I want to ask about all your stuff. Before every podcast, I should say every, but the last about 10, man, I spent about 30 minutes with the Lord, and I just asked God what he's saying for my listener. And do you mind if I share that with you, Lane?
100%. I'm totally open.
Okay, man. So it's kind of funny because of all the things that we just talked about. Obviously, I had no idea what we were going to talk about. But you talked about those last couple of weeks, something changed for you. I don't know. We didn't get into what that was. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I heard the Lord say specifically for you, Lane, is stay in the lane until I say it's time to shift. Don't second guess where you're at right now, this current minute. You are right where you're supposed to be for this season. I hear the words life changing. Lane, you have the gift and the ability to see ahead for people and the goodness of what's in others, and it allows you to speak life into the hearts of people around you.
Amen.
So
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. That's good stuff. Lane, where do we find you? Talk about 2 best-selling books. What are your books? Where do we find you? It's talking about for those of us that want some coaching, read your books, need encouragement. Where do we find all that?
If you go on Amazon and type in Lane Ethridge, the first one was called Changing Lanes. And the second one was called Kairos, Kairos. Kairos means an indeterminate amount of time where everything happens all at once. And so it's an opportune moment to take those opportunities and turn them into momentous opportunities for others. So yeah, I would love you to go download a copy of those and get it, not for me because we don't make much money off it. It's because hopefully the message in there will resonate with you and hopefully change your life. I wish, John, I don't know how you put information up there, but honestly, for the people that truly want to connect with me, I'm going to give you my cell phone. What I've discovered is the people that truly want to connect will make the effort. 90% of people won't. So I know that I'm not going to get bombarded. And if I do, great. That means that you've got an amazing audience that wants to connect. So I'm going to do that. And here's why. Unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, I learned something very recently, which was I did not have Backup Buddy and all my websites are completely gone. So we are rebuilding everything. And unfortunately, it stinks and it's part of life. And I could give up and say, oh, I'm going to go get a job. No, we're just going to rebuild the websites. And it gives us a new opportunity to go build them the way we really want. So I could give you websites, but if you went to it, it wouldn't happen anyway. So I would just Google Lane Ethridge, find me on social media. I'm all over. And here's my cell phone. Do I have permission to give that out?
Yeah, absolutely. Do it. This is your show, buddy.
All right, so it's area code 240-401-9742. So you can go back and listen to that again, so I don't have to repeat it. But honestly, just send me a text. Say, Lane, I don't know how I want to connect with you. I don't know where I am. Let's just do a free 15, 30-minute consultation and find out where you are. And yes, that's a little bit of a sales technique, because once you learn how to do this, you're going to do the same thing. But the honest truth is, I'm not going to sell you anything. As a matter of fact, we are so busy that we probably don't have time to take on new clients anyway, but I would love to do whatever I can, lead you in the right direction, introduce you to somebody that can, or if it makes sense and we want to do one of the 3 lanes that I'm in, which we can talk about when we're on the phone, let me serve you and help you. And yes, I may ask for your credit card because it's to help you move forward. But until then, we got to have a conversation and a dialogue. So if you're not ready, then don't call. But shoot me a text and say, hey, I listened to the podcast, love it, appreciate it. I just want to know more about the acronym. I missed the acronym. I don't understand it. Then let's just do that. And I'll serve you as best I can for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And if it helps you, great. And if it doesn't, then I'll move on to the next person.
Love it, man. Love it. Go ahead and hold on just a second, Lane, as we close out. Listeners, you can find resources. I'll put Lane's phone number and future websites with links to Facebook, different things on our page, rureal.org. You can type in Lane Ethridge. I will have his books, links, all his stuff, because I want you to find him, because I want you to find your gifts, your talents, and your purposes. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when we find those things, we can change the world. So most importantly, just remember, be real, be authentic, and be you, and have a blessed day.
That's all for this episode of Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You. Be sure to go to rureal.org for your free questionnaire to identify your gifts and talents and how you can use them to help people become leaders and catapult them into their destiny to help others become the leaders of tomorrow. We appreciate you spending your time with us and look forward to helping you reach out and revolutionize next time on Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You.